Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking an English teacher's brilliant insights and distilling them down to show you why reading isn't just a fun little hobby, it's a literal language learning superpower. If you've ever felt totally stuck translating words in your head, or maybe just frustrated by how slow you're learning a new language, the strategies we're about to unpack could completely change the game for you. We're going to look at the exact mechanics of how reading actually rewires your brain, step by step. Let's get into it.
So, can one single book actually make you fluent? To answer this, our source, who is a highly experienced English teacher, takes us all the way back to her own childhood. See, she wasn't just handed a dry textbook. Instead, in the third grade, she was introduced to a specific story that completely enchanted her. And you know what? That enchantment is the foundational secret to language acquisition. You've got to be hooked.
Section 1. The power of a story.
To really understand the mechanics of fluency, we first have to look at the emotional hook of a captivating narrative. The source said it best. I was completely enchanted. It was like the only thing I could think about. The book she's talking about here is the classic Little House on the Prairie, which she first heard when her teacher read it out loud to the class. It follows an 8-year-old girl named Laura, and for our source, this wasn't just some casual read-it-and-forget-it book. It became a full-blown, lifelong obsession. It sparked a reading habit that carried her through childhood and literally all the way into her senior adult years. But why? Why does an emotional connection to a book matter so much for learning?
Well, it all comes down to resonance. Growing up in what she describes as a dysfunctional home, reading about this incredibly close-knit, loving family traveling in a covered wagon gave her something deeply meaningful. She was just captivated by how they navigated the intense hardships and the beauty of nature together. Finding a story that you connect with on that kind of personal, emotional level is exactly what keeps you coming back day after day. It makes the habit completely effortless.
Section 2. The Pioneer Context.
Before we jump into the actual language playbook, it's essential to quickly set the scene with the historical setting of this series. Context shapes understanding, right? So this story is set during the era of the American pioneers. These were the early settlers who packed up their entire lives into horse-drawn, covered wagons to travel out west into the massive, flat prairie lands of the United States. They were setting up farms, hunting, building completely new towns from scratch. It's a setting filled with survival and exploration, which, as you can imagine, makes for a really gripping narrative.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the duality the source experiences with this genre. On one hand, you have the pioneer settlers, families seeking new lives and bravely facing intense hardships in nature. But on the other hand, she firmly acknowledges the historical reality of the indigenous peoples who are already living on that land, noting that they suffered horrible treatment at the hands of the government and colonizers. She points out that while the books reflect the character perspectives of their specific time period, looking back on it as an adult definitely brings up a sense of turmoil. And this is actually a fantastic reminder. When you read deeply in another language, you aren't just learning vocabulary. You're engaging with the complex cultural and historical nuances of that language.
Section 3. Rewiring your brain.
So let's get into the mechanics. How does getting totally lost in a good book actually alter your cognitive process for learning a language? Well, when you read, you are literally changing the sensory input your brain relies on. You're shifting from hearing a language with your ears to seeing it with your eyes. By bringing in an entirely different sense, you're lighting up a completely different part of your brain. The source notes she's seen students who love to read achieve fluency incredibly fast. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Using multiple parts of your brain to process information dramatically accelerates how much you retain and learn.
And this brings us to the ultimate goal of reading, breaking out of the translation trap. You know the feeling, right? When you constantly stop to use a bilingual dictionary, you're basically training your brain to stay anchored in your native language. But when you dive into a compelling book, you start using context to guess meanings. And if you absolutely have to look something up, you use an English-to-English dictionary. This forces your brain to bypass that slow translation process entirely, paving the way for you to actually start thinking directly in English. It's a total game changer.
Section 4. The rules of reading.
Now, reading for fluency isn't just grabbing any random book and struggling your way through it. There are rules. To keep your momentum going, you've got to follow these 3 specific steps. Step 1. Pick an intermediate book that genuinely interests you. If it's boring, you're going to quit, plain and simple. Step 2. Read in small, manageable bursts. If a 30-minute session frustrates you, drop it down to 15 or 20 minutes to keep it fun. And step 3, listen, this is the absolute golden rule, keep reading past unknown words. Seriously, do not stop to look up every single word. Reread the sentence, grab the general idea, and keep that English momentum rolling.
If there is one crucial number you take away from this, make it 95%. When you're reading on your own, without a teacher or tutor guiding you, aim for a text where you already naturally comprehend about 95% of the vocabulary. Why? Because if a book is too difficult, you'll just get bogged down, frustrated, and you'll give up. You want a smooth ride where your brain is naturally absorbing that missing 5% just through context.
Section 5. The two-book strategy.
For our final, more advanced technique, the source shares a strategy she actively uses herself to learn Spanish. It's called the dual reading method, and it involves keeping 2 different books going at the exact same time. Here's how it works. Book 1 is your challenge book. You comprehend about 90 to 95% of it, and it's designed to gently push your limits and introduce new vocabulary. Then you have Book 2. This is your easy read. You comprehend 99 to 100% of it. The whole point of Book 2 is just to build fluid reading speed, boost your confidence, and effortlessly solidify those grammar structures in your brain. Balancing these two trains your brain from 2 totally different angles, which supercharges your path to fluency. Just remember the golden rule. Avoid books that are way too difficult to tackle on your own.
Reading is, without a doubt, one of the most powerful, efficient, and honestly enjoyable ways to master a new language. It engages your visual senses, it forces you to stop translating in your head, and it builds a completely natural intuition for vocabulary and grammar. So, now that you've got the playbook, finding that 95% sweet spot, reading in small bursts, and maybe even testing out that dual book method, what captivating world are you going to dive into next? Take a second to think about the genres that really fascinate you, because your next favorite book might literally be the key to speaking fluently. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. And hey, happy reading!